Hi, I'm Greg with Recycled Sound. We just finished repairing this 67 Fender Pro Reverb. And I want to talk to you a little bit about how you choose your amp technician. Because this customer told us he'd played this amp twice in the 5 years since it had a major repair. And when he brought it to us, it was dead. After going through it, we replaced a shorted rectifier, and we replaced what we thought was the cause of it, a 30 amp fuse in a 2 amp hole. Now the customer claimed he'd only tried to play it twice in the 5 years since it was repaired, and he never replaced the fuse, so he thought his amp technician did it. Well, I have a little hard time believing that, but he was insistent on that, and he actually brought back the whole box of parts that were replaced at the time of his original repair. And we're going to go through those parts and take a look and see at which ones really needed replacing. Part of his repair 5 years ago was an output transformer replacement, and I'm not so sure the one they took out was bad. So what I'm going to try to emphasize in this segment is that you need to be careful when you're taking your amp to a technician. Not just any old guy, but someone you can talk to, someone who understands what you need, and someone that's capable of working on a vintage amp without just throwing parts at it and sending you a big bill. So let's go through those parts and see what we find out. Now let's start with these caps. You can tell right away by looking they were original to the amp, and you can see the date code. They were made the 42nd week of 1966. So let's take a look at them. And in every case, they're bubbled. Each one of the caps here have a bubble in them. So he needed a cap job. No doubt about that, and it's something we see all the time when amps come into our shop. So they did a good job in replacing these original 40-year-old caps. So there's no problem there. Now all these resistors that they replaced, and it's interesting, they didn't replace any plate resistors for the sizzling that he said he had, but all of these resistors fortunately test out a spec. So they did the right thing there as well. Well, how about these tubes? Well, the rectifier tube, an original 5AR4, as you can see, tests good. And remember, when it comes to rectifiers tubes, mostly they either work or they don't. This one tests good. Well, how about these Philips power tubes? Interestingly enough, they test good too. Very strong, in fact. Then we've got all the preamp tubes. 2 original Telefunken AT7s and all these RCA 7025s. Again, interestingly, they all test good too. We'll find out if they're microphonic or if they have any other problems when we put them back in the circuit. Now the big deal to me is this original output transformer. You can tell by the date codes 614 that it was made the 14th week of 1966. And this transformer, when you replace it, has a great deal to do with lowering the value of this vintage amp, and we wonder if it's any good. Well, let's do our little quick test that we've showed you in our other videos and see what it looks like. Now we've got our meter out and it's set to ohms, and we're going to put one lead on the main output of the secondary here, the red wire in most Fender amps. We're going to put one lead to one side. And you can see we get 77 ohms on one side. Let's see what we get on the other side. 69 ohms. So if you've watched any of our other videos, you know that if there's less than a 20% difference between the sides, that it's likely good. Well, let's reinstall this transformer and find out. Well, we've got the chassis out, and here's that replaced output transformer. Nothing special, just your standard off-the-shelf Pro Reverb replacement. But let's have a look at this cap job here. Well, we're glad that they used good American Sprague caps, but kind of a haphazard install. Look what they did on the leads here. They didn't cut them to proper length or do anything special. They just kind of jammed them in there. Not exactly a professional repair. Now here's the working side of that chassis, and let's just take a quick look and see what they did inside here. So as we get in close, we can see that none of the plate resistors have been changed. They all look stock to me. They did do a board cap job by replacing the cathode caps right here. Too bad they didn't use the good Sprague caps. Now here again we've got stock plate resistors, and remember that was a part of the customer's complaint, was that it sizzled even on standby, and that's pretty typical for bad plate resistors. So again we've got the replaced cathode caps. Here's the new opto isolator they said they replaced. Kind of interesting that they leave it hanging up in the air like that instead of laying down on the board. Then we get over here and they've replaced these two resistors right here. And again, flying leads hanging up off the board. Not exactly a great reinstall. Now, here's the wires coming up from the new output transformer. We're pretty fond of leaving long lengths of wire. When we get to the power tubes, we've got a screen resistor that's replaced, but the grid resistor isn't. And on the other power tube, they replaced them both. Nice oxide resistor, which is what I would have put in had we done it. And then they put a 3-prong in, and again they like to leave things up and flying, so not exactly the greatest replacement. They did replace the bias cap, but they put in a rather stock one and a generic one at that. We like to put 100/100s in, and they put in a 4750. And while we're here, you can see the date code of when the chassis was put together, which is the 17th week of 1967. So let's start by cleaning this up just a little bit, and let's put the old transformer back in and see if it works, and we'll know if this customer got ripped off or not. Well, okay, we've got the original output transformer reinstalled. You can see the wires here, nice and short like they should be. And in rechecking these resistors in the bias circuit here, all of them were out of spec, so we put new resistors in these 4 positions here. And we should be good to go. We'll find out if this transformer was any good or not. So we're going to pop in all the original tubes. We're going to rebias it, fire it up. Alright, let's turn it on here. And as the tubes start to warm up, you should see the bias start to come up on the meter back there. And here it comes. It's coming up fast, way too fast in fact. 44, 46 is awful hot. And remember, this guy was going for clean. So we're going to back it way down here. We want to run 6L6s somewhere between 32 and 35. So there's 34. We're going to go check the other side, and then let's fire this thing up and see how it runs. I want you to also see that in testing the other power tube, you see we've moved the black lead to the other power tube. We set the power tube on the left at approximately 34 milliamps. Testing the other tube, we still get 34 milliamps. Now, that's a pretty good sign of tubes that are still matched and still in good condition, and they aren't way off. You know, something over a couple of milliamps and you really don't have matched tubes. These old stock Phillips tubes are still matched. Well, here it is, all the old parts put back in except for the caps. So all the original tubes are put back and the original output transformer is put back. And here's what we get. So I'm going to say that our customer did get ripped off by their previous technician, and I'd caution you that when you're dealing particularly with vintage amps, you seek out a well-known professional technician, someone that gets good compliments from your friends or other people. And be careful, don't just drop it off with any old electrical company. Use somebody that knows what they're doing and cares about the vintage quality of your amp.